Yo, what is up? It is the Fantasy Bros. Today we're talking starts and sits for week 6. So, right before we get into it, though, subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers, so if you could help us out, we'd appreciate it. All right, let's get into the starts this week. And starting off, I'm going to say start Darrell Henderson. We just got news that Cam Akers is out for a personal reason, and I want to give y'all confidence that I think you can start him this week. I don't think he's a must start by any means, but if you need a running back 2 or a flex because of injuries or bye weeks, I think you can start him. They are playing the Carolina Panthers, and while, yes, they're a pretty good defense against the run in real life, they have allowed the 23rd, their 23rd worst in run fantasy points allowed. So it's a pretty good matchup in fantasy so far this year, and he really shouldn't have too much competition for the backfield. And I think it could be a game in which they're winning. I think they're favored by like 7 or 7.5 or something, so they should be ahead. Should be a good game script for him, and I think you can start him. And I'm starting him this week over Zay Jones in my flex. So if you're dealing with decisions like that, I'd start him.
My start this week is Eno Benjamin for the Arizona Cardinals. James Conner is out per today. Darrell Williams is also out. So Eno is the last man standing. I think you're going to see a lot of Eno Benjamin, and then for mop-up and just change of pace, you're going to see the rookie Keontae Ingram. Those are going to be the only 2 running backs Arizona uses, I would assume. The Seahawks give up the 5th most points per game for running backs at 26 points per game. Eno has 4 targets in every game but 1 this year. So that's a pretty good PPR floor. I would imagine he sees even more this week because every game previous to this, James Conner has seen 3 or more, and Eno has also seen 4 or more. So that's at least 7 targets a game to running backs. So you could see him even possibly get 5 or 6 catches in this game. He is like the only back. So the Cardinals defense should move the ball well. The Seahawks defense is not very good. So he should get a couple of scoring opportunities as well. So I'm starting him with confidence as an RB2/flex this week.
Yeah, I'd definitely try to get him to your lineup. I'd play him over even Darrell Henderson, who I just talked about. I mean, he just doesn't have any competition. And the Seahawks have allowed 5 yards per carry this year, and they've already allowed over 5 games. They've had 850 rushing yards against them. So that's well over 100 yards a game. So
a stat that I saw today, I believe I heard it on the CBS podcast, Fantasy Football Podcast, so go check that out if you just need more information. But, Eno's only had like 16 carries or so far this year, so just to include him, they did that. Of every running back that's had 16 or more carries, Eno Benjamin actually averages the most or the highest percent of his carries for going 5 or more yards. 54% of his carries has went for 5 or more yards, which leads the NFL.
That's pretty impressive. There's a chance that he could eat into some of James Conner workload if he proves himself. He's got a chance. Yeah. So, if you want to trade for him, you need a running back this week. If you didn't get him off the waiver, try to get him. So let's switch to a receiver start. I've got Chris Godwin going against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have allowed the most points to fantasy wide receivers this year. And it's probably going to be even better this week when we got injuries in the secondary. And Chris Godwin has been getting more and more healthy. Although he's kind of disappointed so far, he's yet to reach 10 points on a week and half PPR. However, I'm giving you confidence that you can start him this week in a juicy matchup where Tampa Bay should be able to score. And I can see Chris Godwin getting a touchdown this week. So start Chris Godwin.
My second start of the week is going to be Jakobi Meyers. So in full point PPR leagues, he's had 10 points, 18 points, and 24 points per game, which is a pretty good floor for PPR receivers. And that's been both with Mac Jones and Bailey Zapp. So regardless of who the starter is this week, he still should see some pretty good solid points. Now, this isn't a force into your lineup type move. Again, it still is the Patriots offense. But honestly, he's been insane. He's had 6 targets, 13 targets, and 8 targets. And that's a pretty solid PPR floor. He did score a touchdown this past game. I wouldn't bet on that often because he's not a very good touchdown scorer throughout his career so far. But I think he should be able to get you a solid 10 to 12 PPR point or 10 to 15 PPR points, and then a chance at a touchdown this week.
Yeah, definitely a flex consideration. There's a chance y'all got him off the waivers in the last couple of weeks, so with people dealing with injuries and bye weeks, I think he fits into a lot of rosters this week. So my last start is Devin Singletary. This is another one that it's not a must start, but I think that you can put him at your RB2 or flex if you're dealing with it, like these injuries that are coming up. A lot of people dealing with James Conner, Javonte Williams, you might need a start. And although Devin Singletary has been disappointing so far, only one real good week. He's had a couple of decent ones and a couple of busts. But I like this matchup against Kansas City, and the highest over-under on the week. It's a 54.5 point over-under, I think. And there's going to be a lot of points to be scored. It's going to be a competitive game. And I think there's a good chance that Devin Singletary catches a good amount of passes. And there's always a chance he gets into the end zone. He's been over half the snaps in every single game. And in 2 out of the last 3 weeks, he's been over 70% of the snaps. So it's seeming like they really want to use him as their primary guy. And I think that you can definitely play him this week as a low-end like RB2 or flex.
Yep. My last start of the week is going to be Rondale Moore. I know it sounds like I'm a homer using 2 Cardinals, but their game against the Seahawks has the second highest over-under of the week. I believe 52.5, so right up there with the Chiefs-Bills game. And so you saw 2 games ago, his first game back, he didn't look great. He didn't play very many snaps, but I'm sure they were just working him in. That was his first game back from a hamstring injury. Didn't want to push it. Didn't want to have him re-aggravated. Last week, he ran surprisingly a lot of downfield routes, which gave him his highest receiving total since like mid of the season last year of 68 yards. He had 7 catches for 68 yards, which is a pretty good floor. So if you follow Ian Hartitz on Twitter, he gave some pretty good stats today. So the Seahawks defense against slot receivers, they're allowing 11.5 yards per attempt, which is 31st worst in the league. Their touchdown percent when targeting slot receivers is 10.7, which is the worst in the league. QBR when targeting slot against the Seahawks defense is 139.3, which is 31st worst. And the explosive pass rate when targeting the slot is 35.7%, which is dead last in the league. So if Rondale gets the same amount of targets he got last week, about 8 to 10 targets, Rondale should be able to eat this defense alive.
Yeah, and I could see him ripping off a big play in this one. Like you said, talking about the explosive play, rate, I think there's definitely an opportunity for him here. And in the last game before D-Hop comes back, I could definitely see this being a good week to start him, and possibly maybe this might be your last chance to start him. We'll see how it goes, but I like Rondale start this week at least, and then see what happens going forward. Yep. So I think that's it for our starts. Let's get into some sits. First, in the sits, I have Najee Harris. Again, this is not a must sit. However, I'm looking to see if I have other options. Najee Harris at the beginning of the year, obviously a first-round pick in fantasy. He was in the must-start category. However, with the struggling offensive line, struggling offense, and now in a matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have allowed the second least points to the running back position, I am looking to get other people into my lineup. To talk about some of the starts, I think I'd rather start Darrell Henderson and Eno Benjamin over him this week. It's not a must-sit, but if you have other options, I'm trying to pivot. He has been struggling on the ground. He hasn't looked as good as he did last year. And on the struggling offense, and with Jalen Warren also getting more involved potentially going forward on third down, in the passing role, and his passing role shrinking, I would try to look and see if I have a pivot option this week against a really hard Tampa Bay defense.
I agree. So my first set is going to be Zeke. He has not looked great this year. I think some of that could be attributed to Dak going down and their offense just in general not being as explosive and high scoring as we projected. Obviously when you lose your quarterback, that tends to happen. But they're going up against the Philadelphia defense, which is a very good defense. I believe they are top 5 in most metrics in the league. So Zeke isn't explosive as he once was. He's pretty much TD dependent. So if you play him, you're just banking on a touchdown, which he could get. I mean, he's their goal line back. But I think this is more a Tony Pollard game, that they're going to need the explosiveness of Pollard rather than the plottiness of Zeke. So I would sit Zeke if you can.
Yeah. He's the player, again, that you definitely can start, but I'm looking for other options this week. Another sit I have this week is Drake London on another struggling offense. The Atlanta Falcons, their pass offense hasn't looked good. They are seeming like a run-first team, and in a matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, I would probably look for other options. Marcus Mariota has only thrown for over 200 yards in two out of 5 games this year, and those were in the first 3 games. So recently, he hasn't really thrown for a lot of yards, and although he has a lot of the target share, Drake London has a really high target share. There's not a ton of targets to go around, and especially not a lot of completions to go around. So, with another struggling offense on a run-first team against a good defense, I'm looking for other options this week.
Yeah. My next sit of the week is going to be A.J. Dillon. I wanted to make him a sit last week. I wasn't bold enough to pull the trigger, but it definitely would have worked. Last week, A.J. Dillon had the least amount of touches this season. He only had 6 carries, which is not what you love to see. He, for the entire season, has been touchdown or bust. The Packers' offense has not been as score-heavy that we thought it would be, so he's really not getting the touchdowns that you wanted from him when you drafted him. The Jets, I mean, you think, Jets, easy matchup, but they're actually not a super easy run defense when it comes to fantasy points allowed. They're about average, so it's not like a super smash matchup. And honestly, they've just been favoring Aaron Jones, giving him a lot more touches than they have A.J. Dillon, which I think they should because he's more explosive, in my opinion. He's a better running back. So I would sit A.J. Dillon this week. For me, I'm sitting him until I see it from him first. I want to see a good game from A.J. Dillon before I play him. I want to see the carries go up. I want to see the usage go up. I want to see the coaching staff trust him before I trust him. And honestly, if he does ever have a good game again, I would try and trade him immediately.
Yeah. I just traded him away in a league, the only league where I had him. I liked him going into the season, but as it's been revealed, it seems like week after week, it's seeming like the coaching staff trusts Aaron Jones a lot more than they trust A.J. Dillon. Like when they're in close matchups and, they need to score points, it's like Aaron Jones on the field almost all the time. And he's doing really well, so it makes sense. It's not that A.J. Dillon's a bad player, and he absolutely could have a good game this week. So if you need a desperation start, put him in your flex. It could work out. But there's definitely a good chance that he just sort of becomes second fiddle to Aaron Jones. And like you said, Jets defense is not too bad. So, yep, sit A.J. Dillon. And is that all we have for sits?
That's all I have.
All right, so those are our starts and sits for week 6. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, subscribe. It's free, so we'd really appreciate it. Trying to hit 100 subscribers. We have been the Fantasy Bros, and we are out.